What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about if Gotham Knights needs and will get a sequel. Now, this is a tough discussion, really, and even tougher if we don't do spoilers, so we're gonna have to. So for the purpose of this video, we are gonna talk very briefly about the ending, just in terms of what was said and kind of set up, and then that will lead us to the future. Okay, so if you don't want spoilers, turn away now, come back when you finish beating the game, and then here we go. So the game leaves it open. Now, a thing we've talked about before, right, even this week on the channel, has been DLC. So I'm going to go with my gut throughout this entire video, as you probably should in life anyway, and I think that they probably won't give us a Gotham Knights 2. I don't think we'll get a Gotham Knights 2, and I don't necessarily think we need a second game. Now, I've gone back and forth. In fact, I would argue maybe 5 minutes before I hit record on this video, I was kind of leaning towards like it was possible. But, you know, obviously the ending of this game, I talked about it before in the spoiler discussion and slightly in the DLC without spoiling it, is that they set up that, you know, the Court of Owls are still around. Talia is still around. So Talia left, right? She left town, but she left some of her league there to kind of monitor you. And that's how the game is left. Now, I believe they did that for potentially 3 different reasons, and some of them can actually overlap. One being for endgame content, and I don't even mean DLC. I simply mean, you know, as you're exploring the city once you beat the game, the Court of Owls, like the Talon Nests or whatever, they're still there, and the League of Assassins, the crimes, the random crimes that happen, they're still there. And that's an easy way of, and even like a lore purpose, I actually kind of like that, where there's a reason why there's these random events that are still happening that still have these factions, even though you defeated them, so that makes sense. The second option is DLC, where you could bring them back for DLC to finish it off. The third option is for a sequel. Now, what's odd is, like, the Court of Owls and even Talia with the League of Assassins, they, in my opinion, they should not be used at all for a sequel. I think with the weakness of the Court of Owls storyline in general in this game, and that you really could, even though it's probably not ideal, you could wrap it up in a DLC. If you want to do some final DLC pack where you brought back Talia and arrested her or whatever and completely obliterated the Court of Owls, I think you could do that in DLC. I just don't think we need the same, and I get it. I mean, you think of even Arkham, right? It's hard to not look back at what we just had. Obviously, Joker reoccurred. He was back in the next game, but he wasn't the same role in Arkham City as he was in Arkham Asylum, and that main villain spot was basically taken by Hugo, although it was kind of like a rotating door, and they really did that for all of the games past, let's say, the first one. You know, Arkham City and Arkham Knight kind of had a rotation of different villains that were all happening at the same time. So I don't think you would have the Court of Owls again being like the whole marketing push of a sequel, and I don't think you'd have Talia doing the same thing. So there's that. There's, of course, also, and I do want to talk about it just a little bit, just touching upon it, the reception to the game. With a game that's kind of mixed, we don't know the sales yet, and as soon as we see any sales figures, I'll obviously make videos talking about it, but you know, what we know right now is that the game, you know, it was received somewhat well. It seems online from fans, but yet again, you look hard enough and you can really find this game is divided. I mean, there's plenty of people that absolutely hated it. There's plenty of people that didn't buy it. There's plenty of people that played it and were fine with it. And there's plenty of people that played it and liked it. There's quite a few different groups. So it really, I think, is going to come down to sales, but even the idea of a mixed game in the way that this game was mixed, would you make a sequel on top of it? Now, one thing I want to throw in there, and this is going to save me, hopefully, from comments that are maybe going to try to pick on this, so let me address this. One thing I've said countless times is you do not make a game with this amount of a budget and this production and these amount of people and for this amount of time. You don't do it to throw it out the window once this game is over. If you were to completely abandon the core how this game works, okay, and then you did something completely, say you did like almost an Arkham Asylum, much more linear style, like action adventure game, and that was your next game, even if it was DC from Warner Bros. Montreal, you would still be tossing away, I'd imagine, many assets that you made in Gotham Knights. So I do think what's coming from them, possibly in the second game, the second studio game, which I do want to talk about in a separate video, but more so this team, right? So they have 2 teams. One of them is working on, who knows, this one was working on Gotham Knights. Does this team then make the sequel? That's what we're kind of talking about right now. And so I do think whatever game this team makes next is going to feel very similar to Gotham Knights, even if it's not a Gotham Knights 2. So that's where I would stand. I do think it's possible it's Gotham Knights 2. I would lean towards no, but I do think whatever game it is, if it's Teen Titans, right, or something like that, you could have a lot of the same fundamental, the fighting kind of, the way they did it would be very much the same. A lot of the assets would carry over if it was Teen Titans, if it was something else. Now, obviously, like a Superman game, that would be quite different, but yet again, maybe that's the second team. Maybe nobody's working on that, right? We don't really know, but that's kind of where I lean right now is they are not going to abandon, even though the game was mixed, even though it wasn't universally, praised. You don't just drop everything unless they're like completely given up, or unless like higher ups say, all right, you're done, you're finished, or you're definitely finished doing it this way. We really need to do a hard pivot, right? So maybe that's the idea where they're like, well, this kind of thing where the game is somewhat built, I think, for live service in mind. That was maybe not the right, I'm saying maybe the executives say, okay, that's not the right idea. We need to really pivot and switch it up. I mean, that's possible. But one thing you don't want is Warner Bros. Montreal to sit there for 9 more years, right? That's obviously not what you want. So whatever the decision is going to be, I think it needs to happen very, very quickly. And it needs to be like immediate, direct, and you need to get working on the next thing, because they don't have, I know again, they have the second team. It better not be 9 years before their next game. But you just don't want it to take, any longer than it has to be. So I'm really going to lean towards no, for the simple fact that I don't really think you need to continue the Court of Owls or Talia. You also have the fact that there is so much mentioned in the game. There are so many Easter eggs. Now, a lot of those I think are just world building. A lot of them, okay? Like Superman emailing you. You see things from Lex Luthor. Batman villains are there, like Hugo Strange and Killer Croc and all this stuff. Like, they could do so much more. And that's kind of the thing where those Easter eggs, I do think they're lore building. They're just to build out the world of Gotham Knights. But I would rather them take a stab at that than maybe continuing down this line. Now, could you make another game with these 4 characters and just rotate out villains and stuff? Sure. But I mean, I also think the demand for having different different actual knights are going to be kind of a thing that people want. And then at that point, maybe it's best you just pivot in general. So that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like you can finish whatever story was started here in DLC, and it may actually be the plan. And then the next game, it'll feel like Gotham Knights. You could consider it a spiritual successor. You could just say, hey, they took a lot of what they learned from Gotham Knights and made this next game. It'll be a lot like that, but I don't think it'll be Gotham Knights 2. Although maybe it will be. Maybe it will be. I know there's people saying, I mentioned it on Twitter. I saw other people talk about it. I think it was, is it Nightwing's voice actor that said, like, he definitely wants to do it. Like, there is want, but at the end of the day, it's if the executives look at this and say, yeah, that was so successful, let's do it again. Let's do a sequel. And I don't know if they'd get there. Now, I don't think the studio would necessarily be shut down. I'm not going that far, but I don't know if they would immediately greenlight a sequel to this game. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on if you want to follow or support me anywhere else. All my social media links, including our Patreon and YouTube memberships, are in the description below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.